Hi, Steve Kirsch here. I'm with Jennifer. Jennifer was a police officer in a major city, about over 300,000 people, and both she and her husband worked in the child uh, abuse section of the police department, and so they handled the SIDS cases. So she was very familiar with the SIDS cases that happened over approximately a 7-year period, which would comprise about 250 or more cases. So tell me what you just told me about the percentage of those cases that happened within 48 hours of a vaccination shot.
So I would, if I were to put a number on it, I would say around 50% of what we saw was within 48 hours of vaccination.
Okay, and how about within a week? What percentage would of the SIDS deaths would happen within a week after the shot?
I would say about 70%.
Okay, so that's statistically impossible if SIDS was happening randomly, and this is after the Back to Sleep campaign rolled out. So obviously, assuming Back to Sleep was very effective, this still leaves since the start of 2000 all of these deaths that are primarily happening due to vaccination. Now, you mentioned that you talked to your pediatrician about your observations. And
Mhm.
what did your pediatrician say about this? Did he acknowledge that vaccines could cause death, or did he say that was just a coincidence? Because what you saw was clearly not a coincidence, statistically impossible for that to have happened by chance.
Yeah, well, so we were shopping for pediatricians and I was also observing this. So it was important to us to have a pediatrician that would respect whatever decision we made regarding our own children. And so I went into his office to interview him and I told him all the things. My husband and I both shared with him all the things that we were seeing and he didn't even change expression. He's like, "I'm not shocked at all." He goes, "And you have a really valid reason to not want to do this with your kids and I support whatever decision you make." So it was interesting to me that he was honest. And another thing that he said to me was that the American Academy of Pediatrics actually trains them to talk to parents so that they don't start questioning vaccinations. They're actually trained to get them off the scent trail, if that makes sense. And he's like, "I'm
Right.
not supposed." He started so many sentences with, "I'm not, according to the AAP, I'm not supposed to say this, but I don't lie to my patients." So he had integrity and was very honest.
Wow. In other words, he's not supposed to tell you that he was trained to gaslight patients.
Correct. Yep.
Fascinating. Now, you said that your did you or your husband go to this police? You said your husband went to this police conference
Hmm.
where they had where was a meeting with detectives who investigate these kinds of cases and other cases.
Correct. And
Uh,
prosecutors and things like
yeah.
that.
So tell us what happened, what your husband reported at that conference in terms of what the official narrative was, in terms of the speakers on the program and what they talked about, and what the side conversations were at that conference.
So the central theme was that almost no death is a SIDS death. That was fully admitted, and that was what the presenters reiterated throughout this. This was in St. Louis throughout this conference. I think it was like a 3-day conference. And I would corroborate that by saying I've never seen a SIDS autopsy report that didn't list at least one symptom. Um, Never did the presenters say it was vaccines, but detectives throughout, the various agencies that came there for the training would have their side conversations. And all of the detectives would say, yeah, we always see it after vaccinations too. So it's kind of a common thing for detectives who investigate SIDS deaths to know at least SIDS is kind of a false diagnosis. And at the,
It's a false diagnosis for a vaccine caused death, essentially.
or
The baby,
basically anything, because there's always like some sort of symptom of suffocation or brain bleed associated with a SIDS stamp on a death report or an autopsy report.
right? Yeah, I mean, there's always there's a reason for every death,
Correct.
and but
And I,
it sounds like from your, well, I mean, if you had to put a percentage on it, I mean, we talked about 70% within within a week of the
Correct.
total number of deaths from SIDS. If you were to ascribe a cause of death, because some are accidental, some are, there's some very interesting cases. But what percentage would you put on that vaccine caused your personal opinion?
My personal opinion,
Right.
I would say probably 85% of the time it's vaccine related.
85% of the time. So essentially, the medical community realizes this, but they write it off. What you're basically saying is they write it off and they justify it by saying that the ends justify the means. In that, yeah, we're going to have these kids who are dying from this, but the vaccine is so beneficial for the other kids that it's a good trade-off, and we'll try to minimize the vaccine hesitancy by telling parents that it wasn't the vaccine, these things just happen, and hope
Correct.
that the parents don't compare notes.
Correct.
That's how it's done.
That's how it's done.
And the physicians feel probably okay about that, because they'll say, oh, well, this is saving so many lives from polio and all this,
Yeah.
that,
The greater
yeah,
good
those deaths. And
mindset.
if we were to tell people, admit to the public about the deaths, that SIDS deaths, that 85% of these deaths are caused by vaccines. If we were to admit to then that would destroy the public confidence in the vaccination program. People wouldn't get vaccinated, and then people would get polio and meningitis and all this other stuff, and that's far worse. So we'll keep our mouth shut about that and try to take them off that. In fact, they're trained. You mentioned that they were trained not to how to get people off the scent.
Correct. 100%.
I think we've covered all the main points here. We should probably just cover finally why you don't go out publicly with your full name, the name of your police department, and so forth. And in other words, wouldn't it be beneficial to the public to know the real name? Like, why aren't you? Can you explain to people why you're not disclosing that? And by the way, you did disclose to me the police department, so I can go and get do a Freedom of Information Act request on these records and obtain these records. So I think that nobody will be able to ever explain this.
No.
You can't have 85% of your cases being caused by a vaccine and not acknowledge that publicly. That this is
that shuts down an entire industry.
Yes. So
But to answer your question,
yeah.
I've been gone long enough, and my husband has been retired long enough that I don't really care. I mean, I'm not going to get in trouble for speaking on what I saw. I can't, disclose information on specific cases or whatever. I mean, they're
Of course.
public information, but that would just
Right.
be unprofessional. It's more what happens to people when they go against the pharmaceutical machine. And I have children, and I have a family, and I have a reputation in my community, in my church, which, those would all support me, obviously. But I've seen what happens to people who tell the truth. And it was interesting. I watched the Ice Cube and Tucker Carlson interview, and at the end, Tucker said, he said, he quoted it perfectly, and I'm going to get it wrong, but he said something to the effect of, if you go along with the agendas, nobody bothers you. You're fine. It's when you tell the truth that you get in trouble. And Ice Cube said, ain't that something? And
Tell me about
so,
it.
yeah. And I mean, you've experienced it yourself, and, Dr.
A little bit.
Yeah. Dr. Tapper's had assets like these. So these are all things that my husband and I agreed. He's not as comfortable about going on camera as I am. But he has allowed me to do this, but he's like, you have to be careful, because I'm
Yeah.
not going to have my children hurt.
Right.
And we know that That's what
Yeah,
happens.
no, it's
So,
horrible. It's horrible what happens to these people who speak out. I had a nurse who spoke out and had her on a video, and she was fired
mhm,
shortly after I published the video. I had
yeah,
no idea this was going to happen. She was completely surprised. She's been a nurse for decades,
yeah.
and they fired her for no reason and
Mhm.
said, "We don't want you working here anymore. Goodbye."
How many doctors has that happened to in the last 3 years too, you
Yeah,
know? So
no,
that's my reason.
it's
It's
hard.
safe more than anything, you
Yeah.
know?
I
And
know when I talk to people in my community about this, they don't want to talk to me.
yeah, yeah. Um,
It's
yeah,
it's
truth
wrong.
hurts, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that if there were a risk benefit, we should talk about it.
Mhm.
But the problem is there's so many risks and the benefits are so small that the risk benefit ratio is upside down for these vaccines, for all these childhood vaccines, and nobody wants to talk about it.
No, and I mean, just from a parent, from parents, because I've been in this movement of telling the truth about these things for close to 20 years, and,
Yeah.
I see parents on both side of it with vaccine injured children. Some of them hold on to the lie so strong because admitting that this was true means that they had a hand in
Correct.
their child's death or their child's injury.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
understand that. I understand how hard it is to come to grips with that. And then I've seen, vaccine injured and death parents on the other side who are so passionate and so like they're amazing people and they get treated like garbage, even with a dead
Yeah.
child. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, it's horrible. If you keep your
yeah.
mouth shut, people will feel sorry for you, and
Hmm.
if you speak out, um, it's a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
We still don't know happen. We still don't know what happened with Bronny James, do we?
Remind me who that was.
He's the son of LeBron James,
Oh, yeah.
basketball.
Oh, well, we know. We
We
know, we just
know.
don't know, right?
We know. We just can't talk about it, can we?
And wasn't daddy, like, going around and basically calling people garbage for not getting the vax?
Yeah, pumping the vaccine.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
Yep, it is crazy. Okay, well, hey, thanks very much. I appreciate your
Absolutely, yeah,
candor here. Oh,
anytime.
did you want to show me? Did you want to show the certificates and just to prove to people that you were really a police officer?
Oh, sure. Um, I blocked out all the other officers in this picture, but this was at my roll call, and that's
Okay,
me there. Here is a plaque my husband was awarded while working in that unit. Um,
okay,
so I don't know if you can see
okay.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Child assault. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Great.
So not making it up.
Boy. Okay. And no doubt about these numbers, 50%
No doubt. Nope.
on
I will stand by that. I will die on that hill. So,
50% within 48 hours of the vaccine.
oh, and
That
the other thing
causality.
we didn't talk about was that never goes on an autopsy report. That was the other thing we never talked
What you
about.
mean that? Oh, you mean that it was within 48 hours of a vaccine, never goes on the autopsy report?
Oh, no, no. So anytime you do a
No,
death,
I'm wrong, or
no, no, no,
no, it
you're
doesn't.
correct. It does not go on an autopsy report.
That seems very, very strange to me.
Well,
Isn't it to you?
oh yeah, but I found out the reason why a couple years later.
Okay.
Um, it's because it's a pharmaceutical that doesn't carry liability. So if the child had a round of antibiotics, that would 100% be on a death report. But you can sue an antibiotic pharmaceutical company, right? But
Yeah.
are there any stats that show antibiotics kill people? No. I mean, maybe like in really rare reactions, but they definitely don't have the record that vaccines have, right? Which was why the liability was removed in the first place, which would be a whole nother show. But so that's honestly, that was like my trigger where I'm like, whoa, wait, why is that not on there? But the fact that you put Johnson and Johnson baby lotion on the baby the day before they died, like why is that on there, but this isn't? That seemed kind of a big deal to me.
Right.
And nobody in my office had an answer. I'm like, why isn't the medical examiner putting this on here? and they were like, "I don't know." I mean, they thought it was as crazy as I did. So I don't remember where I found out. I don't know if it was like in an online conversation with another police officer somewhere else or what it was, but then it was like, "Oh, it's because of the liability. It's the only pharmaceutical that doesn't have it, therefore it doesn't they don't have to do that." And I never really looked
They-
past it, so you might
wow.
want to look into
Okay.
that more and see if it's constant
Yeah.
in other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I don't
Ha-
know.
Have you talked to other police officers in other jurisdictions to compare notes? You know, like they did it, like your husband did at that conference?
No, I mean, in years past, like in Facebook groups, maybe I encountered one or two, but we never
Yeah.
really connected more
Okay.
than, "Yeah, I saw that too,"
Right. Right. But your husband, when he went to that conference, you said everybody he talked to was noticing the connection
Oh,
between the
yeah,
back. Everyone.
sure. Yeah, I mean, like in the people he was talking to, because I it was funny, he was heading out the door today. He goes, "You're throwing all these questions on me now." And I'm like, "I just need you to remember." He goes, "Well, they never did it as as a presenter, but," he goes, "I just remember side conversations. We'd go to lunch or whatever, and everybody was talking about it." So, yeah, I mean, maybe there were some detectives there that didn't believe that, but of the ones my husband were talking to, they all
Yeah.
saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. This is awesome. Thank you
Okay,
so much for taking the time
absolutely.
and also taking the risk
Sure,
by speaking
absolutely.
out. It's
Thank
important.
you. It
Thank you.
is.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. All right.
Take care.